Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen here, Rob Shmuel ben Yoshua, Rashbi in the house. Hope you've had a great week. I know by the time I publish this, the week isn't yet done, but hope things are going well. Hope you're being fulfilled in your secular life, and things are doing very well. And I'm coming to you to help fulfill your spiritual life. That's really what Judaism is all about. I know that rabbis typically are seen almost as legal experts, legal halakha, the Jewish word, the Hebrew word for law. And up until very recently, rabbis were really responsible for just interpreting the law. People would come to them and say, Rabbi, certain things like, gee, my son was born right at the stroke of midnight. When does he get circumcised? Which day? Things like that. Or looking at the Talmud, and a woman says, well, I've got these earrings on and it's Shabbat. And the rabbi says, well, you're not really supposed to wear them because of your temptation. They might hurt your ears and you might take them off, and then you're carrying, which is something you don't do on Shabbat. Yes, it gets that picky. In fact, just kind of as a side note, on the Talmud, it's divided into tractates. Each tractate deals with a different subject. And as you might imagine, the tractate for Shabbat is really the law. I mean, it's got 4 volumes. The Art Scroll Publications, 4 volumes for the tractate of Shabbat, which is longer than all the other tractates. So, a lot of commentary. And that's what rabbis did. Recently, what I like to do for me is I like to take all of that and look at the spiritual aspects. I grew up in, I'm a baby boomer, and we all got into these different spiritual things. Some people got into Buddhism or some metaphysical type things because they wanted that answers. In my mind, that's an integral part of Judaism. Judaism answers those questions. Judaism is a source of spiritual fulfillment. And there is a connection between the halacha and the rituals that we do, and what does it do for your soul? How does it nourish your soul? That's real important. Because if a religion doesn't do that, because religion is our pathway to God, Hashem, and if it doesn't do that, why are we knocking ourselves out? Just to obey laws because our ancestors did it? Well, yes, yes, and we do it for our own spiritual fulfillment, for our spiritual gratification. So, in kind of maybe a little bit of a contrived segue, let's look at this week's portion, Ki Teitzei, which is when you go out. And if you look at that particular portion, you'll see that there's sort of a theme of relationships. So we've got the laws, we've got the people that are in charge, the kings, the ministers, the Kohanim, the various courts that they had. And now we're talking about relationships. So it starts out when you go out to war and you see a woman of beautiful form. Now, we all know that the horrors of war. It's not just about killing people, but people's passions run high. And the commentary discusses that. It's the basest emotions and passions that human beings can have because you're in life and death situations. People come back from war and they've got this PTSD, and they've got these memories, and they've had to do things that they never thought they'd do, but they had to do, in order to protect their people, their culture, And by the way, in Judaism, we don't go to war unless we have to. There's not really, wars that you can go, wars that are you have the choice of doing it or not. We basically want to go to war. And by the way, when we do, and this is Torah, before Jews go to war, there has to be a peace offering. You have to go to the enemy and say, we really don't want to do this. What can we do to resolve this? And then, if we can't, then, you do what you got to do. Right? So we just don't go, we just don't have voluntary wars where we just feel like conquering people because they've got the good land. So we don't do that. So the point is, when you go to war, your passions are running high, and you see a woman of beautiful form. And this is a little R-rated, so kids take note. The Torah allows, or it doesn't allow, but it acknowledges. Let's use the word acknowledges the fact that men will satisfy their lust. They will do that. But if you do, there are conditions. You must, if you want to take that woman for your wife, And that's part of the deal. Then you take her. For a month, she's allowed to grieve. She cuts her hair. She grows her nails long. Back then, that was seen as not a very attractive thing. My, how things have changed as the centuries go by. But the point is that she looks unattractive, and she becomes a mourner. And she also takes off the clothes of her culture, because supposedly one of the tools, one of the weapons that the enemies used back then, is they had these women go out, and this is really a big part of it, and they would dress provocatively so as to distract the enemy soldiers, and seduce them and put them in a weakened state, and now, they're more easily conquered. And this is one of the reasons why this is addressed, to combat, to try and take that power away from the enemy. So after that month, if the man still wants the woman, then he marries her. If he doesn't, she goes free. There's no selling her. There's no making her, like a slave. She goes free, and she gets to go back to her people or wherever she wants to go. Okay, no harm, well, at that point, she's absolved. You just let her go. Okay. The next part talks about if a man has two wives. Now, back then we could. Now it's really kind of a moot point. But the point is that if there was a hated wife, not a hated wife, those really just what the term is. But, a man would have multiple wives, i.e. Jacob had Rachel and Leah. Leah was kind of like his wife, and Rachel was, kind of the pretty one, the one that, he kind of like cavorted around, whereas Rachel did all the woman type stuff. And, and basically God saw this, and that's one of the reasons Leah had the firstborn. And here it's reiterated, it doesn't matter which wife. If this is the wife you don't like, or the wife that you kind of are not favored, or the one that's meant to do all the housework, the menial stuff, then you got the other wife on the side to satisfy your lust. Okay, doesn't matter. Whoever's firstborn, that child, that boy, okay, if it's a male, gets what is befitting a firstborn, which is a double portion. So if you have 3 sons, you divide your holdings into 4 portions, and the oldest son gets 2 of the portions, and the other 2 get a single portion. They each get a fourth, whereas the older son gets the 2 fourths, or a half of what you have, in that particular situation. And that's it. There's no going back from that. That's just the way it is. The next part talks about the wayward son. This is a kid who was born who is not the most moral or has the most integrity. Somebody who goes out and steals and engages in theft and things like that, to feed his desire for, goodly things. And there are consequences to that. But the point of that is that here's a man that went to war, saw a beautiful woman, took her in, decided to keep her in her household, and later on, maybe they're not getting along the way he thought, because she's, different culture. Maybe that interferes in the relationship. Her offspring, her progeny, is someone who really, has that DNA of that culture, of that pagan culture, and isn't really fitting in to the Israelite or the Jewish culture. All right? And that's a warning. That's to say that if you marry someone from a different culture, even though they're Jewish and they're now accepted into our people, there's going to be some consequences, because the woman may not have the same morals as, our own women. And it's interesting, this thing about the lust, because my understanding of Islam, and if somebody knows better, please correct me, but the whole idea of what Bill Maher calls the beekeeper suit, the whole point of that, as I understand it, was not to demean the woman. It was to protect her from the lust of the other men. That's why Orthodox women wear, kind of an ugly wig when they go out, so they don't want to tempt the men. That's part of it. All right. So finally, another part of this talks about the yibum. And yibum is a Hebrew word that when a man marries a woman and dies, he has a house, he has a family, no heirs. It is the obligation of the next in line, next brother, or a cousin, or someone, to go and basically marry the woman, impregnate her, and give him an heir. Now, in Kabbalah, they're saying that when the relative does this, when he has what they call the levirate, which is, the Greek or the Roman word, the Latin word for like the brother-in-law, to liberate marriage is to give birth to an heir, and according to Kabbalah, that heir is the soul of, is the reincarnation of the person that died. That's why it's so important. And if the man refuses to do that, then it's the next brother and next, and finally, if nobody does it, then there's a procedure where the woman takes a shoe, and they go in front of the elders. The woman takes the shoe off his foot, throws it down, spits in front of him, and says, "Here's a man that doesn't want his brother or his cousin to continue his family." So, okay, so high holidays are coming up. I think you all got the emails. We're doing high holidays at our house. Very excited. My favorite time of the year. I love Rosh Hashanah. I love Yom Kippur. I know I'm weird like that. I'm a rabbi. What do you want, right? And Sukkot. I'm looking so forward to building up our Sukkot again. You know, putting it on and hanging out there every now and then. So, okay. So thank you very much for your support, and keep those cards and letters coming. Shabbat shalom.